Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Cedos. I am a lawyer in Miami, Florida, and today's video is going to be on my first jury trial and how I won it. So I thought that I'd call this story time. So a little bit about myself. I graduated law school in 2014, and right out of law school I immediately went to go work at a law firm in Coral Gables that specialized in personal injury cases. And we had hundreds and hundreds of cases there, everything from car accidents to cruise ship accidents. And the one bad thing about working at a law firm as a new lawyer is you really can't do much. They're worried that you may mess something up or you may lose a case for them. So you get a lot of busy work, and to be honest with you, most of the work I did at that first law firm I probably could have done right out of high school. It got to be very monotonous and boring. And so I left. After about a year and a half, I left and I opened my own law firm. And, it's definitely more of a roller coaster ride, but I wouldn't trade it because I've gotten a lot of cool experience. I've done, I do personal injury, so I've done a ton of car accidents, cruise ship accidents, truck accidents, but I've also dabbled in other stuff. Like I've done DUI defense, I've written contracts, I've sued on contracts, I've written leases, I've sued on evictions. I've even done some tickets for people. Just a whole all these different legal topics that I would have never had any knowledge of. And I think because I've gotten so much experience with other stuff, it's actually made me a better lawyer. So back to the main reason for this video, my first jury trial. So right when I opened my law firm, my uncle actually gave me a case, and a realtor brought tenants future tenants to a landlord to lease a piece of commercial property. And so what ended up happening was the tenants ended up leasing that property. So usually the landlord has to pay the realtor a commission. But in this case, nothing was ever put in writing. It was old school, all done on a handshake. And so the commission, when you did the calculation, ended up being about $21,500, and the landlord didn't pay it. And his attitude was like, too bad, so sad, put in writing. So the main, the biggest problem with this case was, how do we prove a deal when there's no evidence? There's no text messages, there's no emails. We have phone calls, but we don't know what was said on those phone calls. And there's, of course, no contract. So that was the main hurdle with this case. And because the defense thought they had such a strong argument against having to pay anything, this went all the way to a jury verdict. And so I think the reason why we won and the other side didn't is it came down to three things. And the first thing was I was prepared. I was over-prepared because the whole process lasts about 18 months from the time you file the complaint until you're in the courtroom for the trying to win the jury trial. And for that whole 18 months, they just the defendant had hired two lawyers. One of the lawyers was in his 50s. He had been a trial lawyer for like 25 years. And the other lawyer was in his 40s. And they had a lot more experience than me, right? And they I think they slept on me. Like they didn't realize how prepared I was going to be. And because they always kind of hinted at like, oh, we're going to beat you because you're inexperienced, we're going to beat you on procedure and technicalities, and you don't know what you're doing. And so I think they really thought they were just going to just run right over me. And because of that, and I could pick up on that attitude, and because of that, I was so prepared. I was afraid of not being prepared. And I practiced my arguments over and over again. I practiced them for family, friends, everyone, just to make sure that everything is clear and concise and it's easily understandable, right? Because that's the main thing. So and also, just to backtrack a little bit, this was my first jury trial, so I feel as though being prepared takes away the nervousness. Because if you're, at least for me anyways, if you're not prepared for something, you're a little more nervous than if you are prepared. Because when you're prepared, you know what to expect. You know how you're going to counter-argue things. You know how to fire back right away. And I was just so afraid of looking stupid and not knowing what I was doing that I just prepared and over-prepared. The second reason why I think we won is that we were just more likable. The other two attorneys, they have a relatively large law firm. They're both partners together at a law firm, and they have about 3 or 4 locations, and there was just this arrogance and cockiness that came off of them when they spoke to, especially to the jury, which does not look good. And they really just weren't that likable. But with my case from the very beginning, I wanted the jury to like me. I wanted them to feel like I was just having a conversation with them, and I wasn't, trying to convince them. I wasn't trying to manipulate them. I just want them to feel like I'm just having a conversation with them. And so I would try to squeeze in jokes here and there, get them laughing. And I think it went a long way, to be honest with you, because the other side did not. The other side was much more serious. And every time the other side, the defendant and the defense attorneys got up to speak, the jury you can just tell they weren't as receptive to them. So that was the second thing, was likability. The third thing was I made common sense arguments, and I think that goes a long way, because when you're talking to a jury, those people in the jury, they're not lawyers. They have no legal training. They have very limited legal experience, just their own buying and selling property, renting, things like that, or what they've seen on TV. And so what I tried to do was make sure all of my arguments were kind of common sense, and the other side did not do that. The other side got up, and they would get up and say things like, well, according to Florida statute 321 ABCD, it says this. And to be honest with you, their arguments were very boring and hard to pay attention to, and I could see it on the jury too, and they weren't as receptive to it. So I think those were the 3 reasons I won. We were prepared. I was overprepared. We were likable, and we made common sense arguments. And in my opinion, in my limited experience, I think that's what it takes to win a jury trial. I really do. And winning your first jury trial is definitely the best experience ever. I think it felt better to win my first jury trial than it did to pass the bar exam or get into law school or anything else I've ever done in my entire life. Because it's just such a feeling of accomplishment that you beat the other side. And the defendant and the defense attorneys were not happy, to say the least. They were pretty upset that they lost, because not only did they have to pay us the $21,500, the defendant also had to pay his lawyers probably around $35,000 for his legal fees. So it was just awesome, and that's something I'm going to try to do going forward in all my jury trials. In every case, is to be prepared, and be prepared. And I think that's the key to success in this line of work. So if you like this story, feel free to share the video. Also, if you have any experience with jury trials, or your first jury trial win or loss, it happens, please comment or send me a message. I'd love to hear you guys' stories, and I look forward to hearing from you.